Before we begin, let me just spotlight the hosting team and just introduce them. First, I begin with myself. My name is Preeti Gupta. I'm your host for today. I'm a PCC coach leading the DEIB vertical for the ICF Mumbai chapter. With me, I have Anne and Nandini. Nandini is our virtual assistant, without which we cannot have this session. She will be managing all the admin work and the logistics behind. And Anne would be helping me, who is the technology lead. She would be helping me with the Q&A segment. And the Q&A would be taken as a consolidated piece towards the end of the section. Now, I'd just have a few housekeeping rules over here. Please ensure that your audio is muted so that it is not a disruption to the session. You may choose to be on video, off video, that is your call. We would also be posting the CC link towards the end of the session, as this session gives 1 CC in core competency and 0.5 resource development. All right, so I think we have a good number and we're already 5 minutes up. So let's begin with today's topic, which is from the DEI lens, what makes a coach the right fit? For that, let me first introduce Preeti D'Mello over here. Many of you will already have seen Preeti D'Mello's profile ahead of this session and know the wealth of experience that she brings to the table. She has spent decades in the human development space, shaping how leaders, teams, and organizations grow with depth and integrity. As the former Global Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Tata Consultancy Services, Preeti led dynamic systemic initiatives that impacted over 600,000 people worldwide, establishing progressive policies, building large-scale leadership programs, and championing underrepresented communities across 49 countries. A recognized champion for diversity, Preeti believes that when people find fulfillment in their work, equity and inclusion cease to be initiatives. They become the natural outcome of healthy systems. This belief underpins the Fulfillment Institute, which she co-founded to bring frameworks, programs, and solutions that strengthen organizations, advance coach education, and support individual growth, all rooted in fulfillment as the foundation for performance and sustained growth. So, with experience on both sides of the table, as a transformational coach and a corporate leader, Preeti brings a unique lens as to how organizations can design cultures where people and performance flourish in sync. Once again, welcome, Preeti, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I wanted to check, will I get the CCUs as well?
Oh, yes, you will. So will I.
Awesome. It's absolutely wonderful to be here. I think it's my favorite place in the world to be amongst coaches. And most certainly is my favorite thing to do is to talk about the work we do and how to dive deeper into ourselves and become more of who we actually are. I'm going to take the support of a deck to work on our session today. We are going to have plenty of breakout rooms and conversations. Here's my ask of you, and this ask, I'm sure a lot of facilitators say, but this one is actually essential, is if I may request you to really talk about this. Be bold, be ready to dive deeper, be ready to, I know we said questions at the end, but if there's a question that you have, put it into the chat box right away. Don't wait to ask it. And feel free to bring all of yourself into the conversation, because while it might be a learning session, it actually is about all of us. It's about what I'm going to learn from you, what you're going to learn from each other. And it's that sharing and that conversation that's going to help us move up a couple of notches or help us go deeper. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and get us started. So as Preeti shared, till very recently, just about short of a year ago, I was with Tata Consultancy Services. I've had an incredible privilege to be able to do both, to work on human development from the lens of leadership, coaching, um, and the rest, as well as lead the DNI function. And it gave me incredible insights into who I am, what my edges are, who I can possibly become, and set rolling a certain journey that I I have to admit I was unaware of till I got into it. There are times where you believe you've arrived, and then you find that you haven't, and that the arrival is actually a starting point. So my journey with DNI was somewhat of the sort. Our conversation today is really about us as coaches. It's about saying, is my coaching the right fit for the person I'm coaching? Am I the right coach? And do I have all faculties present to be able to be of service to the coachee, to the client, or not? Uh, a great way to move into this space is to be ready and open to learn, and our own sense of awareness and honesty where we might be at. So the authenticity paradox is really says that, are we uh, what is well what let me move back forward and then come back to this. uh the idea that we have a authentic self. This is who I am. And it ties in very interestingly with this idea of, uh, this is who I am. I know myself. Even the idea, I have to admit, to a wee bit of an extent, is about this whole self-love. I like myself. This is who I am, and thus a lot of investment in who I already am. And what we found through the research done by this wonderful professor at London Business School, Herminia Ibarra, is that this limits our growth. This limits our impact. And the reason it does is that we have to recognize that for us to be able to show up in coaching, we have to flex. We have to be able to do that sweet dance between being genuine, being authentic, and being adaptable. It's about reframing that entire range of authenticity, because it's about saying, I know who I am, but you know what? I'm willing to know who I'm not and move in the direction of getting to know myself at a deeper level. And in coaching, we say, we tell coaches, we tell ourselves, we've learned, we've been taught, we've been, reminded, bring your authentic self. We tell the coaches, we tell ourselves. However, are we ready? And are we able to hold both the polarity of authenticity and the polarity of what's emerging right there in the moment, or not? As human beings, it is completely fair for us to recognize that this might be or not every now and then, and for us to then seize that moment and turn it around. Because it's not we're not looking at becoming model human beings who've got it all. We've not cracked it all. We are saying we are people growing in the process of offering growth. We are growing in the process of becoming better and better coaches, deeper and deeper into our awareness and consciousness, which is greatly related to the idea of fulfillment, but that's for another moment, another time, as we proceed. So the question that is always asked is, what if our authentic self isn't what our diverse clients need? And diversity is a very interesting idea. Actually, if you look at all of us in this room, we are diverse. We're not the same, because diversity of mind is the first idea of diversity. But then diversity of mind has biases, but the greater biases lie in skin color, in race, and authentic, and age, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go back to my previous slide and ask you this question. Was there a time in your life, in your coaching, where you felt that you helped or hindered a coaching relationship because you were so deeply embedded in being authentic? And please freely use the chat box. I've got it open on the side as well, and I'll keep reading from there. And if you feel like you have something really urgent you want to say, please raise your hand, and that shows up on the screen. So I'll continue as you continue to type. Is this idea of authenticity is a idea that needs to be challenged. In Sanskrit, there's this beautiful expression called satya, and satya is not truth. It's truth with kindness. And to me, authenticity has some sort of a parallel with that, to say, being who you truly are in this moment, while holding the potential of who you can become as you move forward, given that we are all moving forward, right? So, as coaches, we are all aware that we are here to serve. I remember writing my development plan in my coach certification program a couple of decades back, and I remember uh, the thought that came up, possibly for the whole class, was I want to make a difference. I want to be of service. And it's true. And yet, this instrument needs cleaning, polishing, upkeep every now and then, which is why sessions like these are incredibly important for all of us, me included, because it reminds me of what I'm here to do. Now, bear in mind, we are the primary tools in coaching, not our skill, not our ability, but we as people. We are the primary tool in coaching. And as the primary tool, and like any instrument, however calibrated we might be at this point in a moment, we need to continue getting calibrated and being aware of how that influences the way we function. I find the metaphor of knives very critical in this, to say, you need to sharpen a knife, even if it's a best quality knife. Every couple of years, you will need to put it on that stone slab and sharpen it. At least that's how my grandmother did it. And that's what it is. The knife is still the knife. It's still made of that great material. Earlier, they used to be made of iron, but they still needed sharpening. And when we as instruments need exactly the same, we are calibrated and we need to continue to calibrate and be aware, like any instrument, that we have influence, and what might that be doing to our functioning, not necessarily the coachee in this moment. And we get there with the coachee. And thus, who we are, how we show up, greatly depends on our backgrounds, our privilege that we've had, the experiences that we've had, and thus the insights in the blind spot. And I'll share one of mine. I grew up, my father, my grandfather, we come from an army family. In the army ecosystem, in the defense, there's this whole idea of equality, which is never questioned. There is no discrimination basis race, ethnicity, colors, skin color, um, um, age might have a little reverence, but that's about it. So everybody is the same. Religion was a big one. No, none at all. In fact, I remember as a kid that our my father's regiment had a structure in the middle of a ground, and they had four doors on four sides. And one was the church, and the other was the temple, and the third was the gurdwara, and the fourth was the mosque. And there were times where the temple priest was not available, and the granthi from the gurdwara would come and do his work. So the idea of privilege for me was, everybody's already equal, means what are we talking about? And that was my blind spot. So for me to start seeing inequality, I had to experience inequality. And it's only when I experienced it of like, oh, I'm a woman, I'm Indian, I am in the corporate sector, and there are some hidden blind spots in folks around me as well that are giving rise to an insight within me. And I'm recognizing that I might not be, in their minds, I might not be the same as them, which gives rise to the idea that others might be feeling the same. It's not just about me, it doesn't end with me. So, blind spots and insights, idea of privilege, our backgrounds, it's the ground we stand on. And we are, for the most part, unaware of it. We are aware of it because we know our story, but we are not aware of how it's influencing us in our daily lives. And now imagine, we are 60 of us in this room. Each one of us has a ground, and that ground is interacting with each other. So when the ground is interacting, there's going to be a certain sandpaper effect. And that sandpaper effect will give rise to what I like and challenge my authenticity. But this is what I believe. And thus, why should it, why does the other person not understand me? This is right. We also start getting married to that idea of because I have lived it and because I believe in it and because it's my value, it's right. So we'll do this little exercise, the identity iceberg, and this is nothing new. You all know it, but we'll do it with a little twist. We'll play with it a bit. Now, if you look at the identity, look at the iceberg from the lens of identity, we map it. And if you have a piece of paper, it'll be lovely for you to use that. Uh, you can draw your identity at 3 levels. And at each level, you will see something different. Now, there's one visible level, and that's above the water. This is where what people see. So you see me, you say, okay, she's done this work in coaching and D&I. She's spent a couple of decades in the corporate sector. She's a Indian woman with gray hair. She identifies as a woman, as a she and her, um, and so on and so forth. I remember there was a talk I was giving at the UN many years back, and they came up to me and they said, for those who are visually impaired, you need to be able to make uh, your identity visible. So I had to call out as I start speaking that I am. And that was a very, it was a very beautiful exercise to be able to talk about who I am. And yet it was very limiting because I could only talk about what is visible to others. Because the second layer, which is sort of semi-visible at the waterline, is what emerges in this interaction, what happens in when we get into a relationship. And thus, how are you seeing me as I proceed, as I continue to teach this session is, hey, what's her communication style? Who is she really? What is her energy level? What might her value system be? What does she stand for? Our brain is wired to make assumptions about somebody. Our brain is wired to say, this is who I think she is, or I like her or I don't like her, because we have a set sensibility within ourselves of what we like and what we don't like, or how we see the world and how we don't, which is why we say, it's rose tinted glasses. When you really like somebody, you like everything about them. We stop challenging them. And, God forbid it's the other way around. So the semi visible is also important because that's where we are coming together. And that's the point of emergence between two. And then there is the hidden. And the hidden is all the invisible aspects that shape our coaching. For example, I gave you the story of coming from a defense family, and thus what was the background. I came from a family where there was a lot of communication. I believe I'm an introvert, but I come from a family with a lot of chatter about everything. My father would tell us when we'd come back from work and he would say, how's your day? And I would say, it was great. And he would, for those who understand Hindi, he would say, shuru se batao, start from the beginning, right? And I remember holding my head and like, oh God, no, because that was the environment. So we are storytellers as a family. We like to go into details. But there, even the best families with a lot of storytelling and a lot of affection, there could be some trauma. What is invisible forces that shape my coaching? The trauma of my life, if I go back to it, was that I had a nasty divorce when I was very, very young. Now, I might have recovered from it, or I think I've recovered from it, and I go about my life and I do the thing that I'm doing, and I think I've got everything under control. But every now and then there'll be a trigger. If I'm coaching somebody, a young woman with children who's going through a divorce, my levels of empathy will rise and my body will want to embrace her identity. If I meet somebody who is also going through a divorce, whose wife is being nasty to him or not being nasty to him, and he is in the opposing party, I have to remind myself that I don't know the story. Because my psyche will go in the direction of my preferences or my experience. So, privilege, trauma, our early experiences, our family backgrounds, the class that we come from. And class is very important because our societal system everywhere is about how much you earn, where do you live, what do you do, etc., etc. For instance, when somebody asks me in early meetings, what do you do? And I'm like, great question, but I wish there was another question to replace that. What if somebody wanted to know me without what I do, where I live, what privilege I've had? I mean, what would they want to know? That I'd like to be known for who I am rather than all of those things. Yet all of that peripheral, yet the ground we stand on defines how I operate. And thus the idea is who you are is how you will operate, even when you're unaware, even when it's not right up, in your awareness. So we're going to do a quick breakout. And in this breakout, what we'll do is uh, play with this. But before we go there, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about three hidden identities that most influence your coaching. Given that you've drawn it out, we all have that. Like I identified mine while I was writing the deck to say, that's the one. That's the one. Or for instance, one of my favorite roles in life has been of being a mother. So that's a hidden identity of mine that comes into play very often. Or my passion for a subject. So, what are your three hidden identities that influence your coaching? And we're talking, of course, only of the bottom layer of the pyramid. And what happens as a result of these three? And I've given you a little bit of a sentence to complete to fill in the blanks, reminding you of grade two in school. But it basically is to say, because of my experience, what with what was my experience, and how do I show up for my client? So an example is that because of my experience as a parent, I tend to be overly supportive with my client. And I've added to that to say, an attempt to rescue them from their discomfort. It's okay. It's all right. And that is a state of awareness that informs us about how we are operating. I believe that coaching is about us more than the client. When we get to a place where we are ready to continually challenge ourselves and go deeper into our being and understand ourselves better and better, the possibility of us showing up is always uh, enhanced and is sort of beatific, in a way, because we've got that inner life sorted. So let's go into a group sharing, four people per group for 10 minutes, a breakout room. And you could talk about one identity, three identities, but do give specific examples. And when you come back, we'll do a debrief altogether. We are still around 60 of us. We'll take at least three or four examples. And like I said, use the chat box in plenty so that uh, I can tap into that while you're doing what you're doing. All right, then.
Yeah, so Nandini, can you put it into random assignment?
Yeah, yeah.
Four in a room, yeah?
I've already assigned. I've already assigned. Should I open the rooms?
Yes,
Yes,
please.
please
Yeah,
do.
for 10
Please.
minutes.
Or okay.
10
Yeah,
minutes.
I've done.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
Great, Dr. Aikyna Finch. Great to have you over here. Thank you so much for coming in. How are you?
I am good. Thank you so much. I saw the topic and I said, well, let me go in there and support. I absolutely love the Mumbai chapter. Y'all have been very, very kind to me. So I love and supporting. Yes. And thank you so much. Preeti, I
Yeah,
understand that you'll be speaking at Converge, yes?
Yes.
pardon?
Yes. I'll see
Okay.
you at Converge. Yes. I'll see you at Converge. And I think we just about missed each other at the board.
I
I
know.
completed my tenure with CIO, and that was around the time you were coming in. But lovely to meet you.
Yes, yes. Please let us speak, as you have a topic that's near and dear to my heart, right? So let us
Absolutely.
have a conversation, see what we
Absolutely.
can to maybe speak for the MRGs or what have you. So let's
We'll
talk.
we'll talk. Yes, we'll talk. There's plenty to share, and I'll send you a quick or maybe on LinkedIn, and then we can exchange numbers.
course.
Preeti, would you want to go into the breakout rooms, as you were saying, to just have a look around? Or not
No,
needed?
not required.
No.
No, 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 not required. But what I think we do is Anita is here. Anita is not assigned to a room, and there's Raja Jabir who is joining. Hi, Anita.
Hey, Preeti, how are you? Long time.
Very, very long time, long time.
I just joined. I was having problems logging in. So even if I go to the breakout room, I wouldn't know what they're discussing. But it's okay. We'll wait.
Mhm. So, in fact, this identity iceberg is a very interesting exercise, and it requires a lot of brainstorming. As you were saying it, I was also trying to parallelly think through what are three identities that come up for me. So, yeah, good exercise, I must say. Let's see what the breakout room will come up with.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's all about stepping deeper into our awareness. Even awareness has different layers, right? Stepping into our awareness and learning to work with those parts of ourselves that are sometimes invisible to us, visible as stories, but invisible as operating systems.
Hmm.
And the real merit is in recognizing the operating system, because the story is about the heart, right? But the operating system is about the entire being. Is about saying, okay, what's moving me in this direction and what's moving me in the other direction.
Mhm.
So, okay, so as everybody comes back, let's do a quick review of what happened in your breakout rooms. And going back to the idea of the identity iceberg and looking at that unseen layer that actually is our operating system, that we are informed through our stories, but not necessarily claimed as what operates us. My question to all of you would be, what patterns did you notice for yourself as a human being? Um, what might these hidden influences show up? How might these hidden influences show up in your coaching moments? And what would help you stay aware of these influences? So, what's the pattern you notice? What's the influence do you believe these patterns have? And how can you stay aware? Let's open the room. Please unmute yourself. And I can also stop sharing so that I can see all of you. And let's talk about this for about 10 minutes and see what insights are we getting from here. Okay, Archana says insightful exercise. And what, Archana, was insightful?
Let me just thank you, Preeti. Actually, it was one of our participants, what he has said, it was, all of a sudden it was eureka moment for me. I was struggling initially how to share, but I have put it, I have, if you pardon me, I've been a teacher and I have been very strict with my students and don't allow them to, because lots of marks and I'm in my hand. So I don't allow them to come near me or and somehow the other, this tends to get, reflected in my relationship with the clients as well, coaching clients as well. So it's difficult to break this pattern sometime, to change the identity, to change the reality, and to shift from one gear to another. Need to learn, practice, and reflect more.
Right. And isn't it interesting that it was never meant to be easy? Nobody said it was going to be easy living life. It wasn't meant to be easy to grow. And we are in the growth business. And when we recognize our own growth edge, the possibility of claiming that to move into the next level is enhanced. So if you look at, when you said, I find it difficult, but you're really saying that you're very aware of boundaries and roles. And how do you actually come in as a coach, aware of your boundary, because that is who you are, but also creating enough flexibility for the other person in front of you to see you as approachable. And what a beautiful growth edge and what an incredible awareness, because it allows you to then move in that direction. So much of our learning lies in that little switch saying, got it.
Very,
Thanks, Archana.
thank you. Thank you.
Chitra?
Even I thought it was really a highly reflective space with the exercise, Preeti. I really was in touch with how at times, even in the DIA work that happens with coaching, perhaps the client is not ready to face certain truths. And sometimes the penchant of being open and being, inviting a client with certain interventions for vulnerability, it might be my own need. I've got a background of psychotherapy as well. And I think there are times as me and as well as coaching or even as therapists, I think there's a possibility of being a little bit of, okay, I've arrived and therefore I'm going to invite this and the other, whereas I think the other person may not be ready. And I think you brought that in the subtlety in how you described it. I'm aware of that part that can happen.
Right.
Yeah.
And Chitra, this is true. And what is in addition true for me and for you to reflect is that when I have a client who is different from me and is not willing to be vulnerable about a certain aspect of their lives, and I want to drive or persuade subtly in my elegant coaching style, persuade the client to open up, the question I like to ask myself is, what in me desires that vulnerability?
Yeah.
Because
I just want to say that I sometimes catch myself in having that need to see if there's a possibility.
yeah,
I think the need also is to see what is the internal pullback that is important. Yeah, I think this is a wonderful
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
And in continuation to that, again, my experience, not yours, is that I find that the people I coach are the people I need the most for my own growth.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
They bring to me exactly what I need in the moment. And that's the beautiful interdependency of the universe, right? They also call out my growth edges.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I totally agree with you. Yeah. Thank you.
Anybody else feels like a share?
Well, there are a lot of comments over here. I think the takeaways from their breakout rooms. Aparna has her hand up. Can take
Yeah.
that first. Yeah.
Hi, Preeti.
Hi, Aparna.
Hi. So our breakout room was really interesting because the same topic actually came out exactly opposite. I come from an army background and therefore very used to discipline in the formative years. When I became a coach, I loved the structure. And it's taken me several years to actually step back and realize that flow and structure need to go hand in hand. And
Right.
therefore, I'm allowing myself to step back when I realize I'm being overstructured, to just allow more free flow, not necessarily close with action steps. And, so that was my contribution. And the co-members in the group, both of them said that they are very free-spirited. And I love the word that they use. And what they shared was that they were absolutely okay with not setting goals, with just going with the topic of the moment, not being upset if clients are late. And, it just brought such a beautiful contrast in the discussion group. I just wanted to share that with you.
Lovely. Lovely. And I was giggling to myself to say, how interesting that they were in a room with you.
Yes.
The magic of that they were in a room with you where you stand
Yeah.
for structure and you're exploring flexibility and flow. And here come in free-spiritedness, right?
Yeah.
How can we miss the magic of the universe? There's just this whole beautiful dance that's constantly at play. Thank you. I'm going to continue, and some of this will emerge as we'll come back to some of these comments as we go on. So, one moment. There we are. So as we think about this, what is our contextual responsibility when we are coaching those who are different from us? I do want to again reiterate that difference is not an anomaly. It's actually the constant. We are all different. And the more we claim that, the better it is for us as people, because it allows us to then reach out to the other. So in coaching, when we we think about what is the contextual responsibility, for me, what comes up is it's from competence to humility. And the humility is not I don't know, but knowing that I don't know. From knowing that I have a skill, I'm a coach, I've got this, to knowing I really don't know enough about you. So Preeti Gupta and Preeti D'Mello have the same first names, but we don't really know. And as we interact, as the relationality builds, as we invest in each other, even through a coaching connection or otherwise, we get to know more and more. And then when the difference is very visible, then the contextual responsibility is even higher. Then we start looking at the other and saying, I know I don't know, but you know what? I really know I really don't know. I'm actually hitting a blank, and I'd love to know more. And that is our responsibility as coaches. That is our what we call contextual dharma. The responsibility to the client in the moment is to be able to offer yourself with that not knowing, so that you can possibly know some bit and engage as a result. This right fit question comes up very often. Am I the best coach for this client right now? And I want to answer that in how I approach it is I am the best coach for any client as long as I am willing to recognize that I don't know. If I'm going to function from competence, I will potentially hit a wall. And I will potentially come to a place where the client will not feel connected with me and I won't feel like I'm making a difference. So it's about this dynamic relationship that's in process in this incredible container called coaching, where we maintain our core values, maintain our authenticity, we express them with the awareness that the ground the other person stands on is currently not visible to me. And thus the invisible aspect of the iceberg is a process of knowing that happens by and by. That discovery is also a process that emerges through the conversation, through the coaching conversation, and through our curiosity lens. I go back to this mandate that's been my own to say we can only show up as we are. You know, there was a time when I was very young, I was told, you're very temperamental. My parents would say, you're very temperamental, you're very sensitive. And the effort was to make me less temperamental and less sensitive. But it didn't work. Because actually what I really needed was the awareness that would help me understand why I was temperamental and why I was sensitive. And thus that what was operating me was not visible to me at that time, and actually not visible to my parents. So code switching doesn't work because which is what the example I just gave, because it's an exhausting performance. Now I'm a coach, or now I'm a teacher, or now I'm a facilitator. It doesn't work. You are who you are. You, all of you, the whole person is in the room. Each one of us as mothers, fathers, partners, friends, passionate coaches, we are all present in this one container called me. So code switching is not a great idea. Cultural shape-shifting is also not a great idea. So I live for an extended period of time in the United States. I am completely aware that I'm an Indian woman. I understand the US culture to some extent. This is my home, and yet I am not fully aware of what operates the system. I am continually discovering, and thus I can't say I'm American. But I understand my culture, I would say, better than I understand. Now, when I say my culture, India is such a diverse country. And I halted the moment I say I understand my culture, because I know that I understand only what I've experienced. So learning our limitations, learning through our sense of awareness, this really honest, clear dialogue with ourselves helps us move forward. Now, what really helps is contextual fluency, or expanding this range of authenticity. And I love this expression. the range of our authenticity. The range of our authenticity is not about who I am. It's what I'm ready to discover. It's about literally how the ground can get greener because I'm ready to go in many directions and get to know much more than I currently know. We call this curiosity in coaching. So we're going to take a couple of scenarios, and then again, we'll go into a breakout room. The first one is your client comes from a collectivist culture, which is actually the Indian culture is collectivist. The East is collectivist, the West is individualistic. It's changing. It's always a wee bit amorphous. But just for the sake of an example, we'll go by that because there are no absolutes. In the West, there are subcultures that are very collectivist. In the East, there are some cultures that are emerging to be individualistic. So, like I said, for the sake of an example. Now, your client is from a collectivist culture and keeps saying to you, I need to ask my family when they're exploring their individual goals in a coaching session, right? A great way to do these three scenarios is to sit back and experience this in your body. What happens to me when my client says, so what are you going to do with your awareness? How are you going to, what are the next steps for you? And the client says, I need to ask my family. I'm from a collectivist culture. I'm tapping into my body right now. I'm saying, are you serious? Part of my being is going, are you serious about that? So the question is, what might I need to be aware of in myself as I hold space for this client? Because a value system is emerging that wants to approach this a certain way. Where might my own identity, my own experience be creating a blind spot in this scenario? How do I stay curious rather than making assumptions about what the client needs? With these questions, I will ask you all a question to say, what would you do next? What would you say next? Anybody? Varsha?
For me, this comes out as in the moment, what came to my mind and what I would do is probably ask the question, what would you like to do? Yeah, because for me, what it's come out, what happened to me in this, when this popped up here, Preeti, is the thought that, yes, that is a need. And, is that an action that he wants to take? That was the question. So what would you like to do?
Right. Great. It is interesting how we would, when we are just starting off in our coaching practice, we'd get thrown off by something like this. The more we practice, the better we understand that this also might be a doorway. I need to ask my family. Really quickly scanning yourself and saying, what do I need to be aware in myself? What's my value system, my identity, my experience? How am I being informed about how I'm responding in the moment? And how do I stay curious without making assumptions? And thus, what do I say? To say interesting, and why is that important to you? Is that what you'd like to take away as an action point? And there are avenues that open up for the individual to explore the next level of why that was important to them, rather than actually, sort of a door shutting. To say now the coach is confused and the client is wondering why the coach is confused, because you know what, this really matters to me. Moving on to another one. Oh, there's another one. And how do I maintain my authentic presence? How do I still stay myself? I remember in very early days of coaching, I would get totally rattled if what came my way was different from my understanding of the world. I would be like, oops, what do I say now? Because we were so question-led at that time, right? We were led by, I have to have a smart question. It has to be succinct. It has to be clear. And it has to show how smart I am. So my competence was critically important at that point of time. Another one, a client's religious framework conflicts with your coaching model's assumptions about self-determination. Let's read that again. A client's religious framework conflicts with your coaching model's assumptions about self-determination. And maybe I'll give you an example here. This is not a religious framework, but it's an important framework for me and the realization for me. Again, I grew up in a defense family, and thus I grew up with being strong as a great virtue. My father's last conversation with me before he died was, "You're so strong." So great virtue. I'm so strong. I've got it. I've got it all under control. This is how I operate. Is a sound coming through? There's a lawn being mowed somewhere. Okay, great. And I truly wore it as a badge, as I'm strong. Till there was an incident in my life where I lost all control of the situation. And I had to allow myself to sit in that crumbling moment, shed tears of weakness or lack of control to recognize that this too is a strength. My ability to express my absence of control is a strength. And thus, the idea of self-determination comes from, I've got it, I can do it. And, religion is a great informer because, fatalistic, reincarnation, rebirth, so on and so forth. And each faith has a different way. But when this happens in a coaching conversation, how a client's religious framework conflicts with our coaching model's assumptions about self-determination, the question to ask ourselves is, what might I need to be aware of myself as I hold space? The same question. Where might my identity be creating blind spots? Why can't you get a grip on this? Why is this holding you back? How do I stay curious rather than make assumptions about what the client needs? And how do I maintain authentic presence? Now, as you're reflecting, the questions remain the same. The scenarios change. And as you're reflecting on these, you're somewhere, I invite you to start thinking about what is really going on. This has happened to all of us. If it hasn't happened to all of us, the possibilities we haven't gone in the direction of discovering it. But we are human beings on a similar journey of evolution. And thus, contexts change, but the journey has similar triggers, which is why we have a subject called psychology, because we come from similar ground. And yet at the same time, these differences trigger us. They make us feel a certain way. Moving to the third scenario, which is more about diversity of the mind, is your direct communication style causes a client to shut down. Are you essentially, with the same questions, reading the room, becoming aware that what you're doing is creating a certain impact, rather than saying the client is not communicative? Or have you experienced a client who will say to you, I don't know? We all have. We've all had clients in our lives who've come in and said, so what do you think about this? I don't know. What might be creating that? What might I, as a coach, how might I be responding to that? And this might have more to do with self-determination. But if I'm somebody who has very direct communication style, because even though competencies say lay a certain framework, we still are individuals and we bring our own creative style in the communication, in the coaching communication or communication coaching engagement. What is really happening? What about your identity and your experience is creating a blind spot? What are you seeing or not seeing? And are you curious about? I don't know. I remember, this is not my example of one of my teachers when we experienced this, I don't know. And she said, well, how does that feel? How does it feel to not know? And that started opening the doorway. So for us as coaches, if we are in a state of awareness, if we know what our triggers are, if we know what's going on with us, if we know that we are potentially making these subconscious, unconscious assumptions because of our own invisible aspect of our iceberg, and we are deeply married to the idea of being, I am skilled, I am competent, I am authentic, it might be restricting full expression at the end of the client, and a good exploration to step into. So we're going to do a 15-minute exercise called the right fit conversation. And we'll again, Nandini, if you can be ready to take everybody into rooms in 2 minutes while I quickly give this, and we'll put this in the chat as well. How would you assess if you're the right coach for a client whose experience is different from yours? And I'll add a question which is not here. And Shiv, if you can make a note of it and add it in the chat, is what would you do to create that right? How would you step into that, how would you embody that coach who has the ability to being the right coach for somebody who's different from you? Okay, so go have fun for 15 minutes, come back, and then let's see what we find. We'll again do a quick debrief and continue. Over to you, Nandini.
Should I open the rooms?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the question is put in the chat box. You may make a note of it. How would you assess if you're the right coach for a client whose experience is very different from yours? What would you do to create that right fit? How would you embody the ability to be the right coach? Sunil has put the same question earlier. What would you do to create that right? Perfect. The questions take you so much on a reflective journey, and that makes the whole ambience, it's all very silent. Everybody is within themselves trying to figure out, getting more aware of themselves.
That's our job, right?
Yeah. Since we are in this room over here, Preeti, when you say how would you assess if you're the right coach for a client, right? Now, this right can be very subjective. Something which is right to me may not be right for the other. So is it about only assessing yourself and taking a stand over there?
It's actually not taking a stand. It's about
having the awareness.
It's about stepping into this rather than stand, I'll say stance. Stepping into the stance of knowing that you don't know, being curious, and we'll address it as we go along in the next couple of slides, but recognizing that the client knows. The client's not supposed to get to know my cultural background. I'm supposed to play a role. The client is the one who's going into a state of discovery, but I'm mirroring. So I'm in the space where I'm now picking up and saying, oh, she says she doesn't know, but I'm this strong woman who seems to know everything. So what's happening for me? It leaves because I am not used to operating in places that are not familiar to me. My brain goes into a tizzy. I get confused. I start tossing ideas, but only ideas that I'm aware of. So the right fit is knowing really that this is a process of knowing.
And it again ties to all the core competencies and the markers that we have, we run through that, we be curious, we are aware of ourselves, and being comfortable in the space of not knowing so that you can evoke awareness in the client.
The markers do an incredible job of telling us. And the markers have to be lived and experienced, which is a whole different exercise, which is why coach education schools need to do, their job in creating that. Is
So
how
we
do
need to
you
embody it? We need to embody that coaching mindset and being that coach.
So embodiment, absolutely right. And embodiment is the last mile. But prior to embodiment, between the competency and embodiment is experience of, shoveling some of our own aspects of our own self.
interesting.
So we'll do a debrief in the end, given that we don't have much time and we might run late by 10 minutes. So if you can clock that into your schedule, that'll be great. There's a simple technique to make a profound impact, specifically when you're working with diverse identities, but I would say with anybody, and that is let the client lead. And while you hold your competence as your incredible capability, your capacity as a coach is to be curious, is to be grounded, is to be aware of your own triggers, is to have your own have an understanding of what's working for you in the moment. What is it? What is it? What's energizing you? What's holding you back? What are your blind spots? What biases might be emerging? And playing that, which is why I call this a sweet dance, because you're not in one place. It's a dynamic process. There's a back and forth. And a lot of what the coachee is saying, the client is saying, will mirror something in us. And a lot of times they will provide us with a growth edge. And in that moment, are you going to get wrapped up in that growth edge and try and defend it or work with it? Or are you going to hold it and say, I have awareness, I'll come to this later. So in client-led coaching across differences, which is what all coaching is, there are three essential practices. One is humility, which is, and I've said culture is a part of it, but culture is a broad spectrum. So with humility, which is, I know nothing about what it means to you or what it means to be you, even when you come from the same culture. And replacing assumptions with curiosity, not by always saying, I'm curious to know, but there's so many interesting ways to actually position your curiosity as an awareness that you hold as a coach, and that translates into questions, to statements, to even energy. What creates psychological safety for the coachee in the container. And phrases like, help me understand what's that like for you. Sometimes also to say, I know nothing about what it means to be you. And I'd love to know more. Help me understand. Context checking. This is before using any tool framework or implementing it. When you share a tool, asking, how does this land in your context? What does this mean to you? And thus recognizing cultural differences in concepts like time, success, faith, religion, individual, collective, sensibilities, and so on and so forth, value systems. Always ask the question, what approach would be most helpful to you? What would work best for you? And an example is, we could explore this through goal setting or through storytelling. What approach would be most helpful for you? How would you like to proceed? And thus recognizing that the coachee is always leading. It's the client's agenda, not our agenda to showcase our competence. Power awareness, huge one, especially in collectivist contexts, where the coach is sort of a slightly enshrined position, because you know what, you're smarter, you're older, you're gray, you've been there, you've done that. That's not a healthy coaching equation. And thus making some implicit dynamics explicit by saying, this is a conversation in equals. We come here together so that I can support you through my knowing and through my competence and through my awareness, and the agenda is yours. And thus humility plays such an incredible role in grounding us. So all three, of course, being connected. Sharing control while the process is on. What do you need from me right now? So for instance, if a client breaks down and has a teary moment, rather than rush to do anything that makes them feel better, you could, besides offering water and a box of tissues, you could ask them, what do you need from me right now? Or take your time. And really energetically, because so much of us is energetically holding space for the situation to emerge, for the individual before us to actually come to what works for them. Notice and hold yourself accountable when you might be imposing your worldview, because when I think statement has to go out, should go out, because the moment they come in, a reminder that I'm bringing myself into the equation and there is no me, really. I'm playing that role. and role of, I like to call it the lighthouse, which throws light, and the boat is passing by. And that's an incredible metaphor to say that the lighthouse is not traveling with the boat. And thus, my knowledge, my experience, my ground, my experiences, my value system, my faith, my intelligence, my context has nothing to do with anything in this coaching container. And thus, the skill building in this process is how you diversify your questions from what will you do to what feels possible, from what's your goal to what matters most for you right now. How can you overcome this to what support would help you? What's the solution? What needs attention? You're moving from trying to, you know, close this conversation in a smart fashion to creating possibilities that are open ended. We are all exploring life, and thus providing that landscape is possibly one of the best gifts of coaching. Now, your edge as a coach who also works with diverse identities is to learn from yourself, from all that you stand on, and integrate it within yourself. It's not about learning from others. Even the session is about learning about yourself and integrating it. So it's saying, I know my story. I might not be clear about what operates me. I know who I am. I might not be clear about how it's showing up in my interactions and how it's showing up in my coaching style. So, with that, I have a couple of questions for you. One, which of these practices challenges you the most? And I'd like you to take this away in case you don't have the time to respond, given that we're running late. But if you do want to stay and talk about it, I'm willing. Which of these practices challenges you the most and why? What's your biggest takeaway about yourself as a coach? Which practice will you try this week? And where do you need support or learning? With the understanding that we are all diverse beings. Yeah. So while I continue to share the screen, or if Shiv, if I may request you to put the questions in the chat so we can see everybody, and let's spend a few minutes on this. And as you do that, I would also say, as closing, is that we're going to plug in an article that is a useful article for you to read by Herminia Ibarra. We'll put it in the chat. There is an offer for you to continue learning this uh, through a gift that will be provided through ICF Mumbai to you, which is on my company website. And you're welcome to be a part of any community that we support as we move on. Your D&I edge is not about being perfect for every client. You're not always going to be the perfect fit. That'll happen in the chemistry session. That'll happen when you meet each other and say, I like this. This is going to work. I can be of service. Or my edges are so many that I think I need to work on myself before I come back to a client like this. And I know somebody else. I think Annie can do a great job. I'm going to bring Annie in. May I make an introduction? I think there's a coach who could serve you better. And that's the humility about knowing what you don't know or what you now get to know about yourself. And thus expanding our range as coaches, expanding our capacity and going deeper into ourselves. So going back to the 3 questions for us to close is 1 insight, 1 skill, 1 growth area. We're putting it in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing. Love to hear your voice before we close. Preeti,
Great
you have
session.
something to say?
Yes, great session, and a lot of takeaways for us. In between, the silence in the room was, taking all of us on a reflective journey within ourselves. And what stood out for me, Preeti, when you spoke about the lighthouse, which is such a powerful metaphor for all of us coaches, that, how we need to be that lighthouse, which just provides the guidance and create that fine. And towards the end, when you spoke about the DI edge, that is something that we all need to be aware of, that we all have different edges. What shines, when it shines, how it shines, that is what we need to be aware of. Thank you so much for this beautiful session. And before people start, just we go into the Q&A, I just want all of us to keep our cameras on so that a beautiful picture can be taken. for our reference. Nandini, could you please help us with that? I hope everybody has their cameras on. All right, are we done?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nandini.
So
The
back to our
CCU link form is already in the chat box. You can click that and take your CCs. Okay, let's move on to the question and answers. If
what Preeti is
anything.
doing is the smartest thing I've seen done, is that she's making sure that all that is essential is done before we close. Because after we close, everyone's going to rush out. So she's like, take the picture, get everybody informed, and now let's move forward.
Yeah.
All right. So back to the question, and let's hear from you. One insight, one skill, one growth area. I don't mean to put anybody on a spot, but I am going to take the liberty of actually calling out names. Amlesh, do you have a thought? You had the sweetest smile during when the picture was taken. So I was
Thank
like,
you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. So one insight is self as an instrument. Uh, yes, indeed, as coaches, this is one important aspect and very often, forgotten. So that's one. Uh, as regards one skill, uh, again, you talked about contextual responsibility. Uh, that also something that still needs to be like, contextual responsibility, contextual dharma, uh, dynamic coherence. Some of these aspects which say I still need to go through all that a little more,
of course.
think through, reflect upon a little more to internalize it as to what it eventually will become within me and how it will get reflected as a coach. So that I would say even the growth area as well. So
Absolutely. And that's a good reflection because it allows you to know that a 1 or 90-minute session is not going to change our lives. It can bring something into our awareness so that we can then translate it into action or embodiment as we move forward.
thank
Anybody
you so
else?
much. Thanks a lot.
Before you pick up another name, Preeti, I would want to just, Nandini, if you could just highlight the certificates that we from ICF Mumbai chapter would want to present to Preeti, and for her generous sharing of her wisdom and experience with the larger audience over here. We will
Thank
formally
you.
send it to you over the email later.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Anybody else? Any sharing? Rochelle, do you want to share, or is it a clap or a hand raise?
Oh, sorry, no, it was a clap, but I just want to say what a fantastic session. It was so refreshing to get these insights. I think what I'm taking back is the whole thing of expanding one's range and, being more tuned into my unconscious biases. And Preeti, if I may ask, I had a question actually, which I was going to raise my hand for later. So I think in those 4 questions, those were really deep and very meaningful in terms of your own reflection as a coach. And there was one thing around how do I maintain my authentic presence while creating space for my clients? If you can, talk a little more about that, because how do we not make it about the coach? Because we want to let the discussion be client led, but how do we, at the same time maintain our own authentic self?
That's a fantastic question, and I can only give you my own example because it's the only person I really know. The way I operate in a coaching session, I'm trying to operate like that in life, but that's how I operate in a coaching session, is, and I'm going to open the question so that I have that in front of me. The only person I can be is me. And yet I want to be of service. In the process of the conversation, there will be differences that will emerge, some of them that will make me feel better, and some that will trigger me. they will give rise to aspects of me that either endorse my value system or challenge my value system. And when I say value system, I speak for experiences, the entire ground that we stand on. My role in that moment is to show up for the client. And my role for myself as a coach is to be aware of my triggers. And that's authenticity. But my role in my authentic presence can clash because I can feel so moved by those triggers or by that feeling, which could be triggers and endorsement, that I might want to go in a different direction. So my role keeps me in check. How do I maintain my authentic presence? Quite like that. While creating space for the client's full expression is recognizing that I have a role to play. I'm not in this game. I'm not in this profession. I'm not in this space to fulfill my desires. I'm actually truly surrendering as instrument while being aware that I'm as human as you are. And thus things will happen to me in the moment. And that's called mirroring in the coaching session. Well, what happens to you starts to happen to me, and it generates an emotion in me. But am I going to work on that emotion right now or later? That's the role boundary, right? And yet, being aware that this is happening to me is authenticity. Does that help?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Very powerful.
You're welcome. There was somebody who'd raised their hand. Okay, a lot of us have dropped off for good reason. We are over time. Thank you so much. Satyajit, go ahead.
Yeah, Preeti, this point which you raised, I mean, perfectly happening when you have more authenticity. I was handling one trauma case and then trauma case of a lady. And after that, I also, felt, because she was having that sleepless issue. And then same night, I also felt sleep issue. So, I think when we become so much authentic and so much, empathetic with a coachee, it affects us also on the same night or maybe another day. Is it correct authenticity or you said that it happens this way?
Yeah, but that's not the authenticity that I was referring to. What you're talking about, Satyajit, is deep sense of empathy to the extent
Yes,
that now you're so connected to the client
correct,
that you're feeling what they're feeling.
correct.
This can become a barrier in your coaching practice because what you really need is to know what the boundary is, because you can
Okay,
only be of service when you are not impacted. So how can you
understood.
be empathetic and objective in the coaching session?
Okay,
But if you get,
got it.
the downside of empathy or downside of over leveraging empathy is that I'm now so empathetic that I feel your pain and I make it my own,
Correct.
right? But to know when
Yep.
to say, I know what they're going through. I really deeply feel for them, but it's like, the metaphor that comes to my mind is how in how when you come into the door of your home, you hang your coat. The coat is a metaphor for everything that has happened until now, because now you're entering into a different world. So your own ritual of how do you close a session? You close a session
Okay,
by hanging your coat and saying, done.
good. Okay,
My work is done for today. But that
okay.
attachment can create sleepless nights.
Fine. Yeah,
You're
fine.
welcome. You're welcome. Any other thoughts? Any other shares?
That was a very beautiful analogy. Hanging your coat at the door. Very beautiful.
Great. Awesome. So it's been absolutely lovely being with ICF Mumbai. Preeti, thank you so much for organizing. Annie, thank you so very much for inviting me. Dexter, what an incredible group the three of you are. And Nandini, thanks for
And
managing the space. Lovely to meet all of you, and I hope to stay connected. Thank
okay,
you.
thank you so much, Preeti. Thanks. And
Thank
thank you,
you so
everybody,
much, Preeti.
for making this session.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Preeti. We all enjoyed. Thanks a
Thank
ton.
you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Preeti. Thank you, Preeti.
Bye bye.
Thanks a lot, Preeti. Thanks,
Thank
ICF
you.
Mumbai. Thank you, Preeti.
Thanks.
The other
Thanks.
Preeti,
Bye-bye.
the ICF Mumbai Preeti.
Thanks, Kamlesh. Good to see you.
We're taking compliments for both. We are saying
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Chalo, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.